Make sure I get myself centered first. All right. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am Young Morpheus, and this is the first episode of The Political Matrix. To my immediate right, I have the distinguished Chris Richards. Um, One thing I like about Chris is whenever I'm talking about history and talking about different things from a political lens, Chris is one person I've always seen to be able to add that little extra detail and be able to go a little bit deeper on some of the topics and subjects that I really like to go into. So I was so excited when I was able to get Chris involved in the project, and really excited to see how we get going a little bit further on down the line. And then over to the far right of myself, we have Emmanuel, which you guys have seen on my other channel, what I've been thinking on our Black Forum that I have every Sunday morning. Emmanuel has been a steady rock side, right hand for me going through this process, getting started. A lot of good content, very good insight, and a different perspective. So, without further ado, I'll let Chris kind of give a little intro. Well, I guess Chris has a story that we're going to talk about first. So, we're going to go to Emmanuel first, let him kind of give you guys an intro and a more feel for what he wants to talk about. And for those of you guys who haven't got to meet Emmanuel yet, you guys will get to meet him right now. And then after that, Chris, you do your thing.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emmanuel, and my Twitter handle's at the Blue Maverick. I've done a couple of shows with Marcus here, and I just want to dive deeper into the topics of today. Just share my perspective, and hope I can provide something beneficial to the table. Because I know Chris here is good with history, and of course, Marcus is strong with philosophy. So anything I can add to help move the conversation.
Hi, folks, and thanks, Emmanuel. I'm Chris Richards, like Marcus said, at Eclectic Radical on Twitter if you want to follow me. I'm the co-host of Political Hack and Slash with Niall Elcom, which is later tonight at or a little after 9:30, 9:45, somewhere around there. So check us out then. I also live outside Portland, where there's been a lot of excitement lately. The protests were getting very intense. The feds pulled out, or so we think. And strangely enough, last night, with no feds, there was no violence. Peaceful protest, no arrests, nobody got hurt, nothing got destroyed. It's like
right? I'm shocked.
The feds caused the violence at these things.
Well, you've heard that story that's come out recently. Well, we all know about it with a guy who was breaking the windows, and everybody thought for a while that it might have been an undercover cop, and now they're saying for a fact they know that he was definitely part of a white supremacist group. I'm not sure if he was law enforcement or not, but they have confirmed that he was part of a white supremacist group, and he was there intentionally to spark problems, to get things going. And something that I saw on Twitter, which reminds me of that whole situation, talking about protest and everything, and they asked, do peaceful protests solve things? And my response in that was, in every protest, there's always a level of violence. It might not be physical violence, but there's always a level of violence on the smallest scale. It's just disruption. So there's always a form of that. It's just a matter of levels. Now, what we have going on in Portland, that's a whole nother ball game. And I feel anybody who does all this time complaining about all these authoritarian regimes in other countries, I mean, we got to look in the mirror first. I mean, what do you think, man, on the subject?
Well, I know for me, as someone who I live in Atlanta, and someone who recently had the protest in Atlanta, you know, there were there's a lot of political layers, there's a lot of activist layers, and there was so much that I didn't really pay at that point. There was a lot I didn't really pay very much attention to. I didn't know anything about I knew some stuff about, Governor Kemp, and then some stuff about Mayor Bottoms, but I didn't know how far that went or how deep it went, or, even post protest, with we were one of the first states to open up and the COVID rate is rising. And the mayor says we need to wear masks, and then the governor's like, no, we don't need to wear masks. And it's just, it seems like one operates off of doing the wrong thing, one operates off of doing the right thing, and then somewhere along the way they make it into some type of a compromise, right? So,
and what's better than a compromise between the right thing and the wrong thing? Can't go wrong there.
Can't go wrong there at all. I mean, that's something I was going to kind of ask both of you guys, because I'm kind of in the category of an essential worker. So I've been busy working more than been able to be engaged in the protests to the levels that I would prefer normally, or that I have been in the past in other cities that I've lived in. But there has been a lot of protests that have went on here, and I live in LA, basically LA County. So I live very close to Los Angeles. And so there's been a lot of protests all over this area. And you see some of the remnants. Sometimes you're driving past some of the protests and everything, and you see a whole bunch of different shades of the protests. And, that's one of the things which I want people to look more at. Instead of just focusing on the protesters themselves, instead of just focusing on the police themselves, focus on some of the other issues that might be going on in between that. You have people that are always going to find that as an opportunity to take advantage of things. So, yes, there are going to be people who might try to things that they can't get. But then there are also going to be business owners who are going to find that as an opportunity to destroy their business and get some insurance money. I mean, and everybody's looking at this. Well, the right is looking at it this way. The left is looking at it this way. And I feel that what a lot of people are missing is that all of these things can be true at the same time. It's just a matter of which things are more important and which things are weighing more heavily. If you have, one or two people who are troublemakers in the protest, does that invalidate the whole protest? I mean, I feel it shouldn't. And that's how a lot of these people on the right are looking at it. Whereas you have some people on the left who aren't quite completely with what we're trying to do, but they're trying to, I guess, jump on the bandwagon and take over the movement, in a sense. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, who is the left? Let's start there. When we say the left, who do we mean?
Right. Let's define who the left is, because I think there's this huge thing that, there's the left that's portrayed politically, and then there's the actual left. Like people think Pelosi's the left, or
I don't feel represented by Pelosi.
Right. And then there's the actual left who's pissed about this political left version. So when you say the left, I'm just like,
yeah, and that. Well, yeah, and that's why it gets so complicated, because if you're talking to anybody on the right, I guess anybody who's not a Republican or not a conservative to most of them, or not a Trump supporter to most of them, is on the left. And then if you talk to any of us who consider ourselves the far left, we basically consider almost everybody right of, say, Elizabeth Warren a Republican, in which even Elizabeth Warren is right on that line,
Well,
in my opinion.
And I find it useful more and more. Sometimes I fall into bad habits, but I find it useful more and more not to talk about Democrats and Republicans, but to talk about conservatives and about the ruling class and about working class politics. Because the Democrat Republican stuff, the differences between them don't matter in that they represent
Right.
different factions of the ruling class.
Well, even then, it doesn't even matter. But on top of it, most of the difference which they try to portray is mostly rhetoric anyway. When it comes down to it, most of the time when they start actually legislating behind closed doors, there's not much disagreement. There's not a lot of fighting. There's normally a handful of people who all write the same bills, and then the caucus is whipped a certain way. And it's so. And what I was thinking about, and Chris can definitely probably back me up or add in details or correct me if I leave anything out. But going back to like Wilson, I can't remember which one the titan of the industry at the time, deciding, well, I don't really care about his politics, just as long as I can buy him. And so it goes back all the way to some of our earliest presidents being completely bought off by more powered interests.
Well, William McKinley almost couldn't run for president. He had a whole lot of debts that he had incurred in a series of failed business ventures after he was governor of Ohio, and there was this concern that if he ran for president with all these debts, that it would look like people could buy him off. So these businessmen who wanted him to run for president got together and paid off his debt so he could run. Now, this is basically his donors paying off his debts. Think that openly. Think about that.
Yeah, that's how they do it. I mean, something that I found interesting, if you go even back to George Washington, like his first race, he decided he wanted to try to run a straight campaign and just campaign on the issues. And he got thumped in that first race. And what he decided, I'm not going to let that happen again. So he came back with all the booze he could, all the bribes he could, all the food he could. And that's how he got people to the polls. And so that's how a lot of our founding fathers basically bought their way into power in some form or another.
Washington was a very clever politician in the fact that no one really thought of him as a politician. He was invited to the First Continental Congress because he was a person of distinction in Virginia, but nobody knew what to expect of him. When he got there, he just wore his militia uniform and didn't say much. But he had a friend who would always ask his opinion whenever anything military came up. And other people got into the habit of asking him his opinion whenever anything military came up too. First, because his friend was doing it, and second, because he was the only one there in a military uniform. And so when it came time to decide who was going to actually be in charge of the army, they're like, well, we've got George Washington here, who it's just natural. And it was just, he didn't sell himself. He just sort of went there and didn't say much until asked to say something, and then just said just enough to sound smart and shut up again. And people put him in charge of the army.
Yep. That's pretty much how I remember it. I mean, I thought one thing that I found pretty interesting, kind of skipping off presidents directly for the moment, is we learn about our founding forefathers. We learn about the Declaration of Independence. We learn about the Emancipation Proclamation. We learn about Dred Scott, we learn about a bunch of different things in school. But one thing I found that's interesting that we don't ever learn or talk about very much are the men who basically built America and kept America a nation in a sense. I mean, everybody knows about the bank JP Morgan. But a lot of people are, well, now JP Morgan Chase or just Chase now. But
Mhm.
a lot of us don't think about the early beginnings of that. Now, granted, he wasn't necessarily the wealthiest of all those people in that time period, but he had the most power and influence. And presidents literally were at his whim. You know, that's something that's not talked about. I mean, that he literally loaned the country money out. One man loaned the country money out of his own pocket to prop it up.
Well, that's how the
And
system works,
that
though, is the
pattern.
rich people loan the country money and the country pays them interest that makes them richer.
Mhm.
That's how our whole
That's
money
exactly what
system works.
happens. I mean,
I mean,
I
they've been
was
running that
looking
grid
at
for a long time.
exactly. That's yeah. It goes into all that when they created the Federal Reserve in what was it 1911, and all that stuff is all connected. And then you even go into a little bit later on when they wanted to go for the national education system, and, and you had what was it Rockefeller, who basically created our modern form of education that we have now. I mean, granted, there's been
Carnegie,
some tweaks over the years, but it's still basically his system. And well, Carnegie
Andrew
also.
Carnegie,
Yeah.
Andrew Carnegie, the steel guy
Oh,
who sold out to
The
Andrew
steel
JP.
Carnegie.
baron. I mean, he pretty much.
He put all after he sold out to JP Morgan. He made a big speech like Bill Gates did about how he was going to give everything away before he died, and he was the first person to set up one of these big scam trust fund foundations to give money away. So he wasn't rich
Mhm.
anymore. He'd given all his money to his foundation, but his foundation paid all his bills and took care of him. And you couldn't pretend that he wasn't still rich. It was the first big philanthropy scam.
Yeah.
But yeah, his money paid the people who designed public school for New York State, which meant that a whole bunch of other states followed their example.
Mhm.
Marcus,
But
I wanted to
that
ask you a
stuff
question.
never. Yeah, sure, sure.
Right. And it didn't have anything to do with this, but you classified yourself as an essential worker, correct?
Well,
Um,
technically, my job is classified me that way. It's under semantic what's essential.
okay. What did you feel about what did you feel about unemployment ending? Like for like $600 a
What
week
about?
ending?
Oh, you know what? I've been waiting to talk about that topic because I feel like on our show on this platform, these are the kind of topics which would normally be taboo on some of the other ones, which I wouldn't want to touch as much. But if people are here listening to us, they already realize that there's a lot of problems with the system and the truth is not always pretty. And we just have to face it head on and not be afraid of it. How I see things is Congress is doing exactly like Congress has always done. Because of these people who get into Congress, most are so detached already. And then the people who come in who do come from the bottom, they get detached by the environment. It's easy for them to think, well, I can just toss out this amount and it's going to be okay. And then, well, we can just wean them off a little bit. And so they'll struggle a little. And some might have it really bad. But the system overall is going to be fine. And I believe that that's the rationale for why they're doing the things they're doing the way they're doing it. They think that they have enough time to just keep running the clock and making money and playing around. And what I fear is the reason why a lot of people don't see the danger that I feel like I see is because right now we're kind of in partial lockdown mode. And when it gets to the point when it starts coming out of partial lockdown mode, or people just say, screw the lockdown and start leaving. And especially if you're not going to, give people, some means to be able to take care of themselves, people are going to go find means. And if you start putting people in desperate situations, people will do desperate things. And I just fear once you have the triggers of the economy all start to collapse, whether it's Trump or Biden or whoever it is, it's still the problems with the economy are still there already, and that's not going to be gone, in January. And so it's only going to double down, and you got the housing issue. You're going to have people who are going to be short on dealing with the rent. You're going to have people who are going to have. We're not even talking. I mean, okay, granted, we have. Forget about the people who they can pay their rent, but they can pay their utilities. They can't get food. There's so many layers that people aren't thinking about when they start doing repos on all the vehicles, and people can't get to work, and they start losing jobs. I see it
All
right
the
now.
eviction.
It's just
Yep, the
snowball,
evictions.
which is rolling out. Oh, is that
The
The
eviction.
yeah?
evictions, 25 to 30 million more homeless people.
Yep. On top of the 38 million already out there. 15 million, 35, 38 million, 15 million more
Yeah,
out
what
there.
is it
Something
now?
like that.
I'd have to look. Let me look at total numbers.
Right.
See, see, Emmanuel, that's what I think. I mean,
No, because I see some
I
essential
think
workers
So-
complaining about the
get
600 a
desperate.
week.
So as of January of 2018, so these numbers are these are the 2019 numbers. No, there's one more recent. 2020. That's at risk. I want more recent numbers though. No, that's all saying the same thing. So right now, it's probably around 700,000 or so. The 2018 numbers were 552,000.
Okay.
However, there are 38.1 million people who are at risk of homelessness because of various economic conditions. And at least 25 million of them, maybe as many as 30 million of them, are either in the process of becoming or will soon become homeless as the evictions ramp up and get going.
Oh, wow.
Now,
And
that's
see, that's
something
which,
it's something that either president will have to deal with. We should get used to seeing Hoovervilles again. I don't know what they're going to call them now.
Oh, I doubt they'll call it anything
Well,
after
I
Biden,
think
but I'm pretty
just
sure
get
they'll
used to
name
seeing
something after Trump.
Trump Towns instead of Hooverville.
Yeah,
you'll have
Trump
to come up
Town.
with a new name for it, Trumpville,
Yeah, Trump.
Trump Town, or something. Yeah, that sounds
Trump
like
Town. I
but
see Trump Town.
it's coming, and I'm gonna also because see on my other platform, I try to keep it more secular, spiritual looking detail. There's a lot of see that it's adding up to things which show some kind of a hand, whether you are Christian, Jewish, whatever New Age religion or whatever you believe in, whatever you're under. I believe it's just too hard to believe. I mean, for me personally, it's too hard for me to accept that something is not motivating these things. Something is not moving behind the scenes. I mean, even if you look at it as just some kind of cabal or Illuminati or whichever secret society, I believe that secret society is still controlled by some kind of thinking. And so what I was trying to explain to a friend of mine, and granted, I'm more in the spiritual realm. He's an atheist, and we're still good friends that has no disagreements. And what I was trying to explain is whether you're a believer or a non-believer, what you have to understand is the people who control this world, the people who are trying to make certain moves, they are believers. And so you have to understand what they believe to understand what's within them and some of their decisions. I mean, it's throughout all kinds of different forms of philosophy. I mean, even like Sun Tzu, he always talk about, know thy enemy. And so if the wealthy people are the enemy, you need to understand what motivates these people, what gets them up in the morning. Why have $1 billion and still feel like you need more money and that you need to crush more people under your boots? I mean, there has to be something that's going on to make people think that way. And I feel like with just focusing on, well, the wealthy are taking this and they're doing that, and we're not asking the why.
Well,
And once
let's
you
talk
start getting
about why.
behind the why, we might be able to start to understand the next step, which they're trying to do. What do you guys think? What do you think, Emmanuel? Because I know you're a.
No, I actually wanted to hear.
Put you out there like that, but
Okay.
The answer.
No, I wanted to say something about the concept of essential workers that I'm seeing. There was one essential worker exactly from Amazon. That's a perfect example. There was one essential worker from Amazon who was complaining about, someone getting $600 a week while he had to go to work. And I was like, why don't you ever complain about getting like a livable wage or like higher wages instead of complaining about whether or not someone's at home getting $600 a week? Because if you were getting a wage that matched the standard of like 2020, believe me, you wouldn't care anything about if, John Q. Public was getting $600 a week at home. And then you're also complaining and working at Amazon, and that man made like 18 billion. Bezos made like 18 billion off of your work in like one day.
And how much work does Bezos do? I mean, let's be serious. I've never heard the kind of ridiculous stories about Jeff I've heard about Elon spending, 12 hours in his factory. But how much work does Jeff Bezos do to earn those billions of dollars every day?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Like I asked, how can anybody justify that? You know what? I am worth making, say, $30 million a second. I don't care how great I was at anything. I could not tell anybody that, yes, I deserve that. I deserve every penny of this. My amazing skill and talent that I've mastered in my amount of living on this earth has qualified me to make an obscenely gross amount of money and walk past homeless people. And even though I have more money than I can ever spend, unless I start buying literal countries, I just still need to crush more people, and I don't want to pay my people. There's something that's going on there. I mean, myself personally, if the government's worried so much about debt, and these companies have so many of their employees who need assistance, then why don't you just tax that money back out of them to take care of the shortfall? That way, that solves the problem of worrying about the 600.
Well, that's the whole thing.
I'm being a little funny there. There's ways in which they can handle this, and they're just choosing not to.
They know that they could easily take care of people the way they take care of the Pentagon. I mean,
exactly.
Why are people who lose their jobs or people who are stuck working in potentially dangerous conditions not worthy of the same kind of care and support as Boeing and Lockheed.
Yep. That money always seems to keep coming. No matter.
740 billion this most recent time.
That's right. And then I think in the new,
Well, and when I was
the new
in the
stimulus.
military, when I was in the military, they encourage you almost to keep the numbers at where they are. For instance, I mean, I'll just go ahead and disclose my field was weapons. You know what we did at the end of every single quarter? Take a guess. Either one of you, guess what we do?
Wasted all your ammo, so you had to. So
you had to buy more, or
Ding, ding, ding. My first command when I was in Italy, we had an old area where I guess it was kind of just a deserted area. There were targets, old tanks, and stuff like that from World War II. And we would literally sit out there for a weekend and just fire off ammo. You know, grenades, rocket launchers, whatever. You know, just burn up ammo so that for the quarter we meet that certain amount. And you got to understand, it wasn't just going on at my weapon station. It's literally going on at every single weapon station around the world, every single quarter. I mean, when I mess cranked in the galley, I can't tell you how many trays of food that we throw away. We'll literally say, one tray only, one tray only. You come through and get that one tray. Somebody's like, hey, man, I'm a little hungry. Can I get some more? They might let you get a second tray. And then by the time you wait around to possibly get your second tray or something like that and you're hungry, you got to get back to duty. And so what happens is we're sitting there with trays and trays of food that we literally throw away every single meal. And that happens at ship after ship after ship, galley after galley after galley, BX, PX, all the way across the board. That happens throughout the entire military. They have a term for it. It's called fraud, waste, and abuse. But it's nobody touches any of that. That's just kind of a no-no area. It's allowed to fester.
Well, I mean, I'm not even worried about. I mean, a lot of that stuff is penny ante compared to the huge amount of money given to these companies that already make billions of dollars every year. I mean, think about how much. Not even your Boeings and your Lockheeds, but think how much money Halliburton made running McDonald's in Iraq for the troops. Think about how much money Halliburton made building roads in Iraq.
That's something. Yeah, that's something that I forgot about that kind of stuff. I forgot about all of that. At the time when I was in those regions, it was a little earlier and things had changed. And when I talk to people who like, I have a former stepson who he's a Marine and he's been back and forth over there. And the difference in how everything was actually, you had military careers handling the function. So in the chow hall, there's actually military, people cooking. There's actual military people throwing out the trash and whatever. Now it's all civilian. I mean, a lot of the convoys, which used to be military driven, are now civilian contractors. You have military members who almost get into firefights all the time with private security because they don't know who each other are. I mean, it's so corporatized what's going on in these countries. And then to think, more than likely, we're probably going to, my theory is that Joe Biden is probably going to pick Condoleezza, not Condoleezza, what's her name? Susan Rice.
Susan Rice.
And so he's going to have his war buddy to go right. And he knows he's going to have a perfect yes woman, and she's going to check off the boxes. And the couple of people who are going to be ticked off can't say anything because they're still getting a black woman.
Well, at least the folks in New Hampshire don't have to worry about her running for Senate. But It's
Yeah.
kind of disappointing. I mean, after all this, we're going to get Joe Biden and either a cop or a military or a military and national security thug.
Pretty much. I'll spend 80% of the time covering for him. So
Val Demings, who is supposedly still on the short list, literal police chief of Orlando, so an actual cop. We didn't get that announcement today, apparently.
Right, I was hoping we would get that announcement. Actually, I was really hoping.
I was
for that.
too.
Yeah, I started hearing. I was hearing something that it sounds like they're gonna push it back because they were saying, "Oh, well, it could be like announced in the next week and a half." And I'm like, "Wait a minute." I heard specific reports over and over and over that it said it was going to be August 1st, and all of a sudden, the day before, well, not day before, like last night, I started seeing reports that it might be a week and a half from now.
Well, remember they had that leak where the.
What do you guys?
Well, I heard about the leak too. I thought the leak was Kamala though.
Yeah, the leak was it was an August 1st headline that it was that Kamala was the vice president,
and then they put it like an embargo on it or something like that to stop it. And so that must be what you're talking about.
And that could explain why they're delaying it, because if it was going to be Kamala, they've got to delay it long enough that they don't look stupid. And if it isn't Kamala, now they've got to delay it to make sure that Kamala's feelings aren't hurt when she finds out that it's not her. After
you mean like Stacey Abrams on CNBC?
Yeah, that went badly for Joe.
Yeah, her face just dropped completely because she thought she was.
Who do you think it's gonna be? All right, because
I mean, I
put down my opinion. I think it's gonna be Rice. So I want to hear who you guys think it's going to be and why. Because I mean, it could go. There's a bazillion reasons it can go either way.
I thought it was either going to be Harris or Warren. Honestly, it was either one of them. It was either going to be Harris or Warren. Just one of them that just knows how to play ball.
Why Harris?
Warren. Okay, Warren knows how to play ball, and then of course Harris will appease the the cops and the police state. So I figured it was one of them. At the same
time, she's a black woman who they're hoping will appease the Black Lives Matter folks, though I don't think that's going to work as well as Biden thinks.
No. And then it's funny, like I think like around the time they were pushing back the August 1st announcement, there was like a real sharp uptick on settle for Biden. That whole thing. I mean, it's been out since like May, but there was like a real sharp uptick for it, and that crap gives me a headache. I mean, that whole tagline just gives me a headache.
So what I think, and I admit I don't know who it's going to be. I have guesses.
Right.
I think that you've got Obama probably very quietly pushing behind the scenes for Rice. Because Rice is an Obama person. Biden's an Obama person.
Yeah.
If you have Biden and Rice running, you sort of lock the Hillary people out, and that's a big win for the Obama people. And Hillary versus Obama is still the big competition in the Democratic Party underneath everything else. I think there was a part of Obama that almost wanted to endorse Bernie over Hillary in 2016, but couldn't work himself up to it and figured he had to go with Hillary for the establishment. But not because you liked Bernie too much, because you want to stick it to Hillary.
Yeah.
And that's why it took him so long to endorse, because he would have rather Hillary won without him having to support her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
it's about.
I think that the California Democratic Party really wants Harris or Bass, because California really wants to be able to say, we give all these votes that win them the popular vote every year. They really need to take care of us on the ticket. California feels very, very mistreated by the rest of the Democratic Party. Going back to when Bill Clinton beat Jerry Brown for the nomination. And I think that people in California really want Harris. She was the machine's choice to be president in California. She's probably their choice to be vice president. And I think that there are people in Florida who really want Val Demings. In fact, I know for a fact that a really big donor in Florida who gives a lot of money to both Democrats and Republicans, and who runs a law firm that's active in all sorts of progressive court cases, but which will do better and make more money in progressive court cases if the politicians are conservative who fight progressive reform, because then you need to take them to court. So he's donating to conservative politicians while championing progressive causes in court, because that keeps him in court where he keeps making money off of them. And he wants Val.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like the theories. I mean, I definitely can see that because I've lived out, like I live in California now, so I definitely see that picture you're talking about here in California. But I did live in Florida for more than 10 years also, so I do know how the Florida political machine works. North Florida and South Florida, because a lot of people they're different sectors. Even the Panhandle is different when you get out towards Alabama. Well, Manuel knows. You know how North Florida is very similar to South Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the politics and thinking culture, all that stuff is very similar. And then as you get to Central Florida and South Florida, it's a slightly different, but you have only a handful of different people who control certain areas, and they kind of click up to make sure that certain outsiders don't rise up. In Georgia, they seem to co-opt them. In Florida, they seem to just kind of stomp them out or only run fake ones.
True.
Like they run them completely fake from the jump, tending to be progressive. And it seems like in Georgia, they just kind of buy them out once they get to the top.
Well, you have to remember that
you think, man? Buy them out.
Yeah. I didn't really know about a lot. I didn't really know about Florida very much until I think Gillum started running and all of that. I didn't really pay very much attention to what was going on in Florida. When Gillum started running, I really started to get. I really started to honestly get into it. I really started to honestly get into the whole,
weird and wild.
Yeah, and then his subsequent fall from grace, and I guess what they tried to, revive him. Like, oh God, who was that politician where he was like, was it Marion? It might have been Marion, who was caught with drugs, and then they revived
Mary in DC.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago,
right? And that's what it kind of felt like to me. Like you caught him in like an embarrassing position, and kind of like a subsequent fall from grace, and then he's trying to pick himself back up. But I remember his whole race where he picked up Bernie's policies, and then once he got the nomination, he subsequently dropped them, and then the establishment came in and backed him, and then he subsequently lost. And to this day, I mean, that was that was years ago. There's still people in Florida that still hate, people like me and people like other people who were pointing out, Gillum was problematic from the start. He was terrible from the start, and you ignored it. You ignored it to stop. You ignored it to stop DeSantis. And
Oh, I remember when the whole thing happened. What was it? He was in a hotel room
mm-hmm.
with a friend who happened to be a sex worker who
Mm-hmm.
had an overdose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so this is the
Yeah.
same guy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
this
same
is why
guy.
people were saying he was problematic in the first place. I kind of feel this now.
Because they know. Politics knows who the problematic characters are. They know. They know already from the jump who the problematic characters are. They do. So, I mean, I didn't know all of that, but
We gotta wrap up. It's time for my other show.
right, absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. I think they do know all those kind of things because I think what it is when they say they vet these people, and we're like, yeah, you vetted them. When why is all this coming out? I think they vet them, but they hold on to the information and they just wait strategically to use it. I mean, perfect example, or they set it up and make it look like something different in the first place. Having a hard time remembering the candidate, but they just recently had a movie. I think it was last year that came out. How he was supposed to meet at this boat or something like that, or yacht, some kind of campaign contributors or something. And this woman came out of nowhere and like just jumped on his lap and kissed him. And they snapped a quick picture of it. And the campaign, the people who were behind it.
I got to drop out, guys. I'm sorry.
I understand, man.
No.
All right, it was good to have you, brother. We'll catch you.
It was good, man. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Talk to you next week, guys.
All right, cool, man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we'll pick it up, and we're going for probably finish it roughly around an hour for this first show. I think that'll be enough. The next show, we'll have it be a little bit more formatted because this one I just want the audience to get to know us. I want them to feel comfortable to hop into the chat, get involved in the conversation. For this first one, I wanted to be a little bit informal because I want people to be able to kind of get to know us. I want us to try to react to different things, as they come, because I don't want it to come across as scripted. I don't ever want anybody to think that we're feeding each other notes on how to think. I mean, this is real people, real ideas. What was I saying before that? Chris dropped out.
No, you were saying that they know, but they kind of keep it to themselves, and
that situation. Man, I want to say it had something to do with, I think, Bush Senior, maybe, where they went to the ship and sat down. The woman sat down in his lap, took the picture. The guy who had set the whole thing up politically, wrote a book and came out and admitted it, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about destroying your career years back." And so I feel like they set up situations intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
They also find out dirt on people and decide when they're going to let it come out. Now, I believe Gillum's situation is a little different because he just screwed up and had a moment. And when you're in the club, they'll find a way to protect you when you're in the club. So I look at it like this: if this would have been any other black man who was not in politics, the situation would have went massively different that night. So I just, for me, that's why I believe that they know these things. They know what's going on. And since they know these things are going on, they either decide, I'm going to protect this person if something comes out, or I'm going to use this on this person when they get out of line. I feel it's the same thing they do in the entertainment industry also. I mean, I won't get down into go too far down the rabbit hole and tinfoil theories too early. I don't
Hmm.
want to lose the audience. I want to, build them up and with what we're talking about, with the basis we're talking about. Some people might know exactly what we're talking about and be a little bit ahead of the curve and be able to add some insight. But just like I was explaining to somebody about when you're talking to different people who have different political ideologies, you just can't go at them full bore with all the facts. And I feel that's part of where a lot of people, you know, on the far left, where we've run into problems. Yeah, we'll have the facts, but that's not always enough sometimes because if people don't trust you as the messenger, they're not going to listen to the facts. And uh, Tim Tim Black says it best. He says, you got to sprinkle some facts on them. Just give them a little bit, and then walk away. Give them a little bit and walk away, and then that's how you'll start that conversation and dialogue with people, to try to at least show them your perspective, even if they're not going to completely accept your views or your policy, vision. They can at least see, oh, okay, this is where you guys are going. Um, in all honesty, I didn't think I would do this. I had a conversation um, with a K-Hive member, and it stayed pleasant the whole conversation. They were willing to hear out information that I wanted to give them. They had disagreements, and I feel like if you are biased towards a candidate, it is going to be harder for you to accept certain things. So some things I accept that they're going to naturally push away at
Hmm.
first sight. I just hope that they're able to take that information and dig on their own because where I come from, uh, even if Bernie has some kind of impact on the Biden presidency, if that's what happens,
Hmm.
it's still not going to be any of the policies which we want. So I don't gain anything by just attacking Kamala Harris or anything just out of spite. Um, my criticisms and critiques of different candidates come because I have certain values and beliefs politically, and I feel if you are going against my beliefs, I don't hate you as a person, but you are basically an adversary to me. And I was trying to explain to the person I was speaking with. I wanted to make it clear that I'm not going at the supporters of certain said candidates. Granted, on my Twitter, I might unfollow you if you do because I don't want to hear, the nonsense sometimes. But I'm not going to hold that against the voter because I got to realize that they don't have all the same information or facts that we're playing with. Um, what's your thoughts on it? I just wanted to bring that up. I know I rambled on a little bit, but I wanted to bring that up because part of what I want to do different on this show is I want to be able to invite other people in,
Hmm.
and at least let them hear our perspectives, whether they accept it or not. Just like I did in that last video when I was talking about re-examining all your beliefs, not necessarily throwing them away or just automatically taking somebody else's, but just going back and checking to see if you actually, if that's still exactly what you believe, or have your beliefs evolved, or is it something that's like, I don't believe that at all. That was just nonsense the whole time. I mean, we all go through our own developments and changes and steps forwards and steps backwards. So, you know, I try to keep that in mind and try to remember we're all on different paths in our journey. We all have different experiences. So, what's your thoughts on my little mini tirade there?
Well, you were talking about the K Hive member, and
Mm-hmm.
it reminded me of that quote from Men in Black. Like, if a person is smart, you can almost explain anything to a person, but people
Exactly.
are panicky, are panicky wild animals, and you can't explain anything to them because I've seen groups of them. I've seen groups of Hillary supporters, groups of Biden supporters. I've seen groups of KI supporters. As a whole, maybe separately, you could probably explain to them exactly why someone is problematic, but explaining it to them as a whole is infinitely harder. So I don't know, man. There's just so much information coming from so many. Say that again.
Oh, I just wanted to respond. I saw a comment on there. Yeah, but I'm still listening to you.
No, I was going to say that there's so much information coming in from so many different places that it's hard. It's hard to ask like a rational, logical question most of the time. Or it's hard to ask a question that goes against like the narrative or someone's biases. If you had asked me, 8 years ago how I felt about the Democratic Party, I couldn't tell you much. But now I've got volumes because I've seen so much, but I'm always consciously aware of the fact that there are celebrities and people that we piss off, that I piss off on a regular basis, and some people operate in their little bubble and they're comfortable operating in their little bubble, and ultimately that's nothing I can really do. I can only really work to keep myself informed and work to make sure other people keep themselves informed, so that with the knowledge that they know, they can go out and keep other people informed too. Because at the end of the day, that's what I really want. I just want I don't want to influence anybody to vote for anyone. I don't want to influence anybody to really do anything. I just really want to influence more people to think for themselves. Because I rarely, really see that happening. I see Biden saying something and everybody just believes him. Or I see a Biden supporter, they'll die on a hill before they'll admit Biden did anything wrong. I mean, you even had people said, Biden can assault me as long as he can beat Trump. I'm like, how do you reason with people like that?
You had the lady that said that he could boil babies and eat them, and that's fine for her also. I mean, you have some people who are saying some. I mean, maybe it's hyperbole. Maybe they just have a kind of dark sense of humor. I'm not sure. But like you were saying, I kind of want to dovetail on that because you were talking about you don't want to try to push anybody to vote for this person or not vote for anybody, and I feel like that's a big part of what we're trying to do here on this channel. Our goal is just more information and let you take it wherever you decide to go. Sometimes people receive information and they reject it. Think about how many times that a friend who's dating somebody and that whoever they're dating is cheating on them, and you try to tell them about it, and that might just blow up in your face, and they don't want to hear it, and the anger gets turned towards you. So giving people the information all the time isn't simply enough. One thing which I started trying to look into myself, because I felt like after this 2019 to 2020 primary, it kind of just broke my brain mentally. I feel a lot of the people who are on the left, especially on Twitter, shout out to Alyssa there. A lot of people are really fighting the good fight. The problem is there's been so much programming that people have inundated in them, and that level of programming, you can't break through with one comment. You can't break through with one video. It takes a process of trying to have a conversation. And what I realize is, at least personally, what I'll say, I feel I have been doing wrong, and I feel others are probably guilty of this also. And I feel if we can fix this, this might help the whole, you far left to left movement overall. Is
Mhm.
we have to try to find better ways to meet people where they are. I don't mean capitulate on our values. I don't mean capitulate on policy. I mean, we can't be a pit bull on everybody and try to force, information or our views or say, you know what, you guys are perfectly fine with the rich. You can't be so brash with some people because some
Mhm.
people, they hear tonality first. So if they're hearing the tonality, they're not hearing your content. And I realized there's all kind of different ways, and there's so many different people that we interact with that we do not know at all. For instance, I had somebody get on and they started off, yeah, whatever, brother. I'm like, for one, nobody that doesn't know me personally, I don't want you to refer to me in any kind of
Your brother.
especially if you were disagreeing with me. I took that personally. Now, I could be just overly sensitive because of some of the things I've experienced, but I took that as a little racist. Um, I was talking about criminal justice issues, and I have a white person which their first response is to call me brother and an idiot, and then start telling me Biden's plan is something that you need to jump behind. And I'm like, I'm not even my conversation I'm having is not even about Biden. I'm talking about something different. I'm just talking about criminal justice. I'm talking about policy. I'm not talking about candidates because where I feel a lot of people who are stuck in the whole electoral politics, back and forth little bubble is they stop thinking about other possible ways to affect change. Out here in California, one thing I see, which they do a lot, is they try to do ballot amendments. Now, the problem in California is there's so much money out here and so much corruption that there's lawyers who write these things so tricky that they have you voting against the policy which you support because of the way it's worded. Um, in some other states, you are able to get somewhere with ballot initiatives. Um, but there's various different ways. If you live in an area where you know that there is a strong lefty contingent, and this time right now is when you need to be working on the next election. You need to look at this election is done and in the books, and how do I prepare for what's my next move? Um, when I was back home in Kansas City after I got out of the military, I went back to Kansas City for a few years. Um, they came up with a new tax, the utility company. Basically,
Mhm.
everybody who didn't pay their bills, they were going to create a tax to disperse that across all the remaining paying customers' bill. And a lot of the people didn't know anything about this. I rallied and tried to push as many people as I could to attend the meetings and to push back. Once they got some pushback and some exposure, and it got a little bit of coverage in some of the smaller newspapers, they got a little nervous and they started to move the meetings, want to do closed door, not want to hold the votes in front of cameras. And so what they eventually did is they start having the meetings at like midnight, and then 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and then have the vote at like 3 in the morning to make sure that the numbers are extremely low, so there's no pushback for when they put through their nonsense. And that's what we can fight back in little areas like that also within our state and local areas. I mean, say for instance, the area where I live, square mileage is not very big, but there are a lot of people in this small area. If you're able to canvas an area like this, of course, once things are better, but if you're able to canvas, you can get actually face to face with a lot of the people which would be your constituents if you decided to run. I mean, if we start doing more things like that, building relationships, that doesn't cost a whole lot of campaign dollars to get your message out there and talk to people. And if you're able to do that, especially if you're in an area which is smaller or you're in an area where you can get your voice out, you're able to build up a following that is going to hear your words and be able to decipher from the propaganda that's spoken about you, because they're going to know you. They're going to have seen what you work on. They're going to know, that you're walking the walk that you say. And so when the media starts trying to slander you, you're good to go at that point, because your followers know who you are.
I understand that. I think it was like right before Bernie dropped out. It was just this year, and I kind of saw that Bernie wasn't going to win. I kind of saw that Biden wasn't going to win. And I remember trying to round people up to get mad, to start fighting back. I was like, the Democrats are about to cheat us again. It's about to see like a repeat of 2016. And everybody was like, no, just calm down. We'll see how it shakes out or whatever. Maybe Bernie will still win. And then Bernie just straight up dropped out. And I was just like, I realized I can't operate that way. I can't go and swing like, I equated it to like Anakin Skywalker and Attack of the Clones, where he just went after Count Dooku with both lightsabers, and then he ended up getting like pretty effed up. I'm like, that's what it felt like. I was like, I already wanted to fight him on the ground. I didn't even want to vote or anything like that. I just wanted to get out there and fight him on the ground. And I guess I'm not really comfortable working in the system anymore. I'm more comfortable like upsetting people out in the street. That's really what it's starting to feel like for me. Like if you want to vote, I'm cool with that. But if I had to choose between waiting for somebody to vote and stopping evictions by protesting, I'm gonna stop evictions by protesting, because Democrats' new thing is like they got 99 days or whatever, just need to wait 99 days. I'm like, people will be evicted in like 30, 60 days. I'm like, people are going to run out of unemployment like Monday. I'm like, we don't have time to sit here and wait for your system to work.
Yep.
So, that's just me. Hey, I got to get going though.
Yeah.
Marcus. So
yeah, it's about enough time. Wrap it on up.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for showing up. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everybody who came to join us tonight. We will be back again next week. We will be here. Was it 8:30 my time on the West Coast? Emmanuel, what's your time over there on the East Coast start time?
It was 11:30.
11:30 is his start time. So if you're on either of those, make sure to pencil in those times. Also, make sure to catch us tomorrow in the morning on my other channel, What I've Been Thinking. Any last comments that you want to add in, Emmanuel?
Nah, man, I'm good.
I
got nothing.
I was gonna say before we get out of here, I see that we have a couple of people who are still viewing. If you have any topics which you would like for us to talk about that get really deep inside of the system, questions that you might have, or just something that somebody or something that you want to talk about, please send any of us a message, or definitely send me a message at Real Marcus J Cage on Twitter. So send me a message there. Thank you guys again for joining us. As we get further along, we'll get more information out there. Please make sure to catch our short videos. I know I've laid out a couple. Emmanuel will be dropping some also soon, and Chris will be dropping some, getting into specific topics. With that said, we're going to get out of here. You guys have a great one. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.